Have you found yourself navigating a dark night of the soul? Are you craving a deeper connection with the divine feminine? Are you ready to integrate the balanced union of the masculine and feminine within? Then let's get started on the journey towards wholeness to reclaim your sovereign soul. My name is Cynthia Clark. Over the past several decades, I have undergone many dark nights of the soul. My healing journey has been a reclamation of my sovereign divinity. Whether you're just starting out on your self-healing journey or have been exploring techniques for many years, Discover Divinity offers an opportunity to uncover the new possibilities for discovering and reclaiming the innate wisdom within. It is time to discover the new possibilities. It is time to discover you. In today's episode, The Healing Power of Love, Embracing Presence and Flow, we are talking about how in a world that often feels fractured, rushed, and overwhelmed, that sometimes it's taking that moment to return to something eternal, something that's profoundly simple, yet deeply transformative, and that is love. What if love just isn't an emotion, but a frequency, a force that heals, liberates, and brings us back to wholeness? What if love is how we bring heaven to earth, not someday, but here and now? In this heartfelt conversation, Angela Smart and Greg Titus share their beautiful stories of awakening, from dark nights of the soul to spontaneous healing, and how love became the catalyst for everything they now embody and offer to the world. Whether you are healing, expanding, searching, or simply remembering who you are, this episode is for you. Take a breath, open your heart, and let's journey into the power, the presence, and the possibility of love. Welcome to the Discover Divinity podcast, Reclaim Your Sovereign Soul. My name is Cynthia Clark, the founder of Discover Divinity and discoveringdivinity.com. Today, we are diving into my favorite subject, and that is love. Not just as an emotion, but as the force, the powerful force that transforms us and it heals. I am truly honored to be joined by two incredible guests today. Angela Smart is a mental projector in the human design system that represents just 3% of humanity, and she is an intuitive alchemist who guides others in shifting deep mental patterns and reconnecting with heart-based wisdom. Using light language, heart-brain coherence, and intuitive insight, she helps others expand into flow, clarity, and embodied self-awareness. Greg Titus is a rare reflector in human design, just 1% of humanity, and he is a spiritual teacher of the way. He specializes in pattern interruption and guides others into deeper alignment with their true selves. Greg's work centers around presence, sovereignty, and helping others witness the patterns that shape their very lives so they can choose transformation with clarity and power. Together, Angela and Greg represent this beautiful divine union of the divine masculine and divine feminine energy as they bring us wisdom and their own transformative journeys and deep spiritual insight that brought them into today's topic. So I'm going to go ahead and just go over a couple of things we'll be covering, and then we're going to dive right in. So first, we're going to talk about how this concept of love, even though it carries meaning on so many different layers and levels, it can heal us deeply and transform our lives. Love is that catalyst that can bring heaven to earth in our everyday moments. It is also something that remains pure and powerful despite the world that has given us the stories of fear and ego. We're also going to talk about how blocks like fear and shame and trauma keep us from being in that ebb and that flow of giving and receiving love. And then also the acts of love being the attractors for vitality, forgiveness, healing, and a lasting state of being. So, again, welcome to the show. Today is such a beautiful honor. So, let's go ahead and take a deep breath, open our hearts, and join as we step into the healing power of love. When we begin here, I love on the show to be able to talk about that dark night of the soul, something I'm passionate about, not because I'm excited really to have gone through all the dark nights of the soul that I have, but knowing that that's the way that we evolve and we grow. I knew that the dark night of the soul was something key that I wanted to talk about on all of my podcast episodes. So any of my podcast guests, I love to hear what was that cocoon moment. What was that crumbling for each one of you that brought you into the catalyst that propelled you both into the work that you do today?
Well, I'll go first. Okay, I would say that my catalyst began in 1997, 98, when I started having back pain problems, sacral back pain. And at the time, I wasn't obviously as conscious as I am today. I didn't really follow chakra systems or any of the Eastern spirituality practices. But over time, I had that back pain for about 10 years. And in 2006, I was out gardening and I was just kind of prompted by spirit to go inside my home and meditate. And silly as it is, back then, 2006, I didn't meditate. I didn't know anything about it. So I kind of thought, this is weird. I don't know. Am I going to pretend to meditate? I don't know what I'm doing. So I just went in my bedroom and spent some time alone and in prayer and meditation. And over the next couple of hours, I saw patterns that were expressing through me that now I became very aware were in my mother, were in my grandmother, my mom's mom, and kind of could see back through the lines of time and didn't know how far back this pattern went, but it was all connected to a belief. And when I was aware in that moment, I asked myself, well, do I really believe that? And I was able to say, no, I don't. And the next morning, I woke up pain-free. I mean, after that sitting I was there for 2 or 3 hours. I went to bed. I just went straight to bed. And then the next morning, I woke up pain-free and never had the pain again. And though my mom had had it her whole life and or much of her life, and my grandmother, as long as I knew her, she walked with a cane and had an achy back. Um, and so that was kind of the catalyst. If you're asking for a catalyst, it started
Mm-hmm.
me questioning a lot of things. I began questioning the religion I was part of and being told that, the priesthood holds the power to heal. And yet I'd been alone in my bedroom, communing with myself, my higher self, God, and had experienced this spontaneous healing. So I sat with that for almost 10 years and probably about 8 or 9 years and was raising all my kids. They were little at the time. And so I just was a mom. And about 2014, 2013, 2012, I started to kind of direct myself back to that moment and say, okay, I know that was pretty miraculous. I really want to understand what happened. Why did that happen immediately? And what I did have an awareness of was I had changed a mental construct, and the psyche has a way of holding deep emotional impacts, and a lot of people call them trauma, for a very, very long time. And then that gets passed down for generations. So I knew it was ancestral generational healing, and that I had let go of a strong hold that something had on me. And I didn't know how far back again that it went, but that's kind of where everything began. And I continued on that. And then I'm sure we'll wrap some more of that into it, but that was my
Mm-hmm.
catalyst.
Yeah, I was very amazed when we first met and you shared that beautiful transformative story, and a lot of the people in the field of work that we are in, I don't know that a lot, I mean, I guess some people do it for fun, but I think a lot of the healers in this field of work, more than likely, they have come through those dark catalysts. They have come through those awakening moments to bring them into that wisdom of where they are the teachers. And I mean, when I look at my own personal life and those moments too of finding this innate connection that we all have to the divine and our healing capacity, you can't see it any other way once you've seen it. And yes, I think it's so powerful that you've come into this space to then say, wow, who am I and what will I be doing for the planet? Because I think when you go through an awakening, that awakens you into these more dimensional parts of who you are on a soul level. And when we clear out that ancestral trauma, we clear out those generational belief systems, it opens us up to be able to tap into wisdom on a soul level. So I would love to hear your experience, Greg, as well. You've also overcome some really dark parts of your journey as well to bring you into your higher gifts.
Well, yeah, I def overcome. I suppose I've always had a substantial amount of darkness near, um, meaning I've always been highly sensitive and highly aware, which leaves a person misunderstood and misunderstanding
Mm-hmm.
themselves. And so because of that sensitivity, luckily I was blessed with an aspect of self that protected me. I came into this world, this life, with a very strong sense of self, which makes me very sensitive and very tender, and with a need to be protective of that self. Um, it speaks to a life before this when I was in mastery of self, and then came into this life. And in my Gene Keys expressions and stuff, it talks about that. And that's provided a tremendous sense of awareness. The present moment is what determines everything. And so it's hard to see when I wasn't very sensitive, uh, very gentle. And so in the teaching of contrast in this life, I've also become very hard. The contrast to tender, to soft, to willing, because I have such a willing heart. In the reflector aspect, it shows kind of an open chakra center there. And that's different than a lot of people. I kind of have a constant state of broken heart. I'm that tender and that
Mm-hmm.
protected as well by the divine,
Mm-hmm.
well loved by the divine because of my willingness to be tender in any moment. So I've really had no choice in this work and being a healer and being conscious because I came in that way. Um, the real activation of a man's mission always happens in the contrast of teacher. And so, in meeting Angela, the deepest contrasting teacher I've ever met in this life, I saw aspects of self to a depth that had been unrelieved at that point, only in the self. And I've always carried a deep sense of self that's helped me to embody my purpose to be an exceptional human. That's my path. It's something that the sleep of humanity makes us push away as we learn in the contrasting teacher of life. When I met Angela, because of my deep experience with material science and production agriculture at large scale, I'd been serving that darkness that I'd always felt close to, which was the feminine. I became in service to the feminine as a herdsman, a caretaker of cattle and land, and maternal resource here on earth. And so I've remained in service to the divine feminine principle all of my life. And the embodiment of that deep sensitivity and awareness that I've held all of my life was turned on. That purpose was turned on when I met Angela. At that time, in the contracts of man and in the world, I was married to a beautiful human being. I was in multiple other loving relationships and was expanding and projecting the self that I understood until that awareness had to be sacrificed. And because of my life of sacrifice, I've sacrificed many identities, many attachments, many roles, many responsibilities, and all those things fail. And when I came into connection with Angela, I remembered what doesn't fail. The night we met, I was giving a message to her that I had been given in prayer, meditation, where my intention and my presence was in the same location. And so I was open to receive from the divine. And I was told from my higher self, from my divine aspect, to tell Angela that she was loved, and went through an experience of wrestling, not against the flesh, but against principalities and dominions and stories that filled my mind and my experience and my awareness. And I had to leave those stories to be able to communicate that to her. And from a place of authenticity, I had to tell her that I loved her, because I wasn't going to be so blasphemous as to claim to speak to her for the divine. And then that connection went as simply as it came, an offering, an expression of love with no expectation. And then as the world sorted itself out in me, and as my expression came through that dark night of the soul, as you talk about, which is to be loved if we're to be blessed with its teachings, and all things are teachings to man in this world. And through the experience of that dark night of the soul and leaving all the stories of the 90 and 9, I evolved to an awareness that I was no longer connected to anything on this earth but love. And so when I made a personal commitment to love and honor and respect the divine, as if it were my last breath, by giving up all my connection to earthly things, then as I drew near to the divine, Angela was able to draw near to me. And when I was ready,
Wow.
she reached out to me and has helped teach me of my elect nature, my divine self. She's been the kindest teacher. I suppose better than talk about myself is to help understand from my experience the gifts that Angela brings. Angela is 7 soul aspects, or many soul aspects, in one human being, meaning she carries all of her time and space with her in her present moment. And if you looked at her hologenetic profile, because us humans love proof, the experience of her is all the proof you need. But to look at human design, you see all of her profile, both conscious and unconscious, as open. meaning that every aspect of her is free in every moment to connect with every aspect of her reality. And so she willingly gives herself in radical and free and kind and compassionate service to every moment that she shows up in. And to me, that is Christ consciousness walking. And that's my experience of coming into my calling.
Beautiful. Goosebumps. Wow. So beautiful and timely. I feel like our planet is so in need and so craving the message that we're talking about today, because love in so many of its layers has different corners and shadows. Like if you just say the word love, that can mean so many different things to so many people, and so many people that have layers and levels of trauma. Love can actually be something difficult for them. It's hard for them to lean into that pure love source that the both of you and I are speaking of today. And so I love your journey. I love how you both have explained these dark night of the soul catalysts, but it truly is through that darkness that we have to strip away the ego. Just like you were saying, it is the death of identity after box that we've been put in. And this work is not always easy, but the reward when you finally step out and into this new space of freedom, the connection is like a firefly to the light. That's the only way I can describe my purpose and passion on the planet. Is it is like this draw to why you're here and what you're doing. And I loved, Greg, how you were talking about that tenderness of your soul. Like, it's been such a privilege for me when I have the opportunity to work with men. I work with women alike. But when I look at the age of Aquarius and I look at the healing balm of the divine feminine, and I look at so many of these men that I've worked with that were shamed for being these intuitive, tender souls, like, I love that you're here holding this space so that you can truly be a reflector to these men that are being called to the healing work, so that they can have that as a mirror to say it's safe. It's safe for me to step into my authentic self and to be true to that part of themselves. And so thank you so much for sharing that, because I feel as men and women have also been pushed into a very toxic masculine energy. They've had to repress a lot of parts of themselves, but men also have been pushed and repressed in so many ways. And so I love that you guys share this balanced energy to be that mirror for individuals on this journey. So I would love to hear any of your insight that you've got with that as we are moving into the topic of love and how we can kind of sit with that energy.
Yeah, I think I would like to echo the need for men to have and hold a compassionate space of recognition that it isn't just the feminine. It isn't just our mothers and sisters and wives and work associates. It's not just women who have been repressed. It has been the feminine nature within the masculine as well. And we've suffered for that as well. And it's okay to step into authentic places of honoring and giving space to the feminine nature wherever it shows up.
Yes. Beautiful. Angela, did you have something you'd like to share?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's along those lines. I love to invite everyone out of victimhood and into true authorship of their lives, because nothing has been done to us. We've chosen it all since the very beginning. And if we don't consciously choose a new path, that's what creates those cycles. Call it ancestral generational, call it lifetime to lifetime. I really am not particular at which language you choose. It depends on where people are at in their journeys of kind of how they'll see things. But until we stopped saying they caused this, they did that to us, they wrapped us up in this belief system, they, until we start taking full accountability and just saying, hey, the cycle stops here. Like Greg, pattern interrupt. I need to choose something new, because we as human beings don't quite understand how the mind works. And that's the one thing I'm real passionate about and really know, being full mental projector. I understand the mind. And the patterns go so deep into the psyche that until you really take a bird's eye view of what you're living, the ways you're feeling, the repetitive thoughts you have, you'll struggle to get out of those cycles, and you'll be living the same life as your parents, and then the same life as those that came before them. And when you take full accountability and responsibility, you can author something new. And if you're going to be here on earth, that's what the divine wants of all of us, is for us to be our own divine self, breaking the chains that bind us, cutting the umbilical cord, truly individuating and saying, this is who I am. And I'm not those that came before me. I'm choosing a new path. I am ascending to true authenticity, authoring my own expression here on earth, because otherwise you really are just repeating. And like the scriptures say, there's nothing new under the sun. And that's really why it says that, because most people are just recycling what has already been.
Yes. And like, I love that. And, that's what the Discover Divinity podcast is. It's about reclaiming your sovereignty, coming back home to our soul wisdom, and especially with the thousands and thousands of years that we have been subjugated to, with lies, with illusions, with fear, with shame, with victimhood, the martyrdom, the punisher, the drama triangle. It's so embedded in our DNA and the mind that untangling that web is quite the process, right? And when we move into this space of awakening, I feel like there are little light bulb moments all along the way where you have a moment of going, when I first learned, wow, I don't have to be a victim, right? These really bad things did happen. But now, how do I take my present moment experience and now and not that I don't go there, because the mind always wants to take you to why. Why did this happen to me? And going through those emotions. But I think when we first travel through the mind, it is that catalyst that then helps us elevate, right? It kind of reminds me of an elevator. We have to go through that more third dimensional patterning in order to shake us and to go, okay, I'm contending with ancestral programs, generational programs, all of these toxic parts. And these are the breaking aparts. These are the parts of us, the ego deaths, the identities that we have to let go of. But once we realize we are the choosers, right? We get to do something differently. And especially in society where we've been here for thousands and thousands of years, of where the mind has been revered. The mind has been the authority in society. But once we realize the mind isn't the authority, right? We are the masters over the mind. And when we learn to work with that mind and let it be, I mean, I don't even want to say a servant, but it is kind of like when your soul steps into the role of being the advocator of saying, okay, this is what we're doing, the mind can settle, and we break out of those toxic patterns that keep us spinning our wheels.
Time, when you think of it linearly, will distort.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have limited perspective, because we're mortal, um, in our awareness, as you kind of put that limit on the mind, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
the mortal mind that has limits. The divine mind has no limits. And so our search is to enter our divine mind. And I suppose I would wonder a little bit why you hesitated to call that ego, or that reflection, that perception of the self that's the ego. Why would you be unwilling to accept that as a servant?
Yeah, I think it's probably that shadow side, right? It's that part of yourself that you don't want to see. And and when I've leaned into ego, I've realized that we get to actually allow those parts of ourselves to be our friends, not our enemies. And and because of culture, because of programming, we've always been taught that these shadows, right? Even since we were little kids, you're scared of what's under the bed or in the closet, right? And so we've never felt courageous, I think, as humans, to realize that we have to sit with the ego. We have to sit with those shadows and actually befriend them. And when I've noticed with ego, when we peel back those layers, the ego is actually just another layer that helps us weave into a deeply rooted trauma or experience that created it in the first place. I think because of programming, we are taught to fear it or to not accept that it's a part of us too.
I think that's where I like to think of the divine as a revealer, right? As we approach the divine reveals truth in things. And in the end, do all things not serve the divine? And therefore, a graceful perspective would be to anticipate that everything that is revealed was for love's purpose. And that allows us humans to have a graceful enough perspective to accept the ego as also a servant of the divine, and
Mm-hmm.
useful and loved and needed.
Mm-hmm. And would you say that because I would love to dive into a little bit about the way and this concept that you teach, because many of the listeners may not be familiar with what that is. And so I suspect some of these teachings that we're going to get into today fall under some congruency with that. So would you give me a little bit more information on what that is?
The mind, in some of our previous statements, might have been conceptualized as a bad thing, that we've been under the oppression of this mind. And the mind is actually more than we understand. When a baby is born, their entire area that we think of as the mind is lit up with connection. And then we're patterned into the fear of powers and dominions and principalities. And we perceive that we lack connection to the divine. And we enter into the covenant of man. The things that we've been remembering to be scared of, the things that we've been remembering come and get us if we don't watch out for them. And by exercising our mental capacity to plan for the future, for the needs of man, we deny the workings of the divine, because we don't leave enough space. And so teaching of the way is remembering that the present is the only place where the divine exists, and all realities grow from the present. And so it's an understanding of leaving the stories that bind us to those principalities, those dominions, those things before us that are trying to help us to remember how separate we are. And when the mind or the brain comes back into higher functioning awareness, when we move from our human DNA experience and the stories of man, and as we move into our mitochondrial DNA, and we move into our awareness of light and its infinite potential to create, our conscious awareness moves to a place where the mind can come into balance. You can cast your net on the right side, and you can allow that repression or the oppression of society to leave your conscious awareness by allowing more creative thought, by allowing more creative expression. And as you come into harmonic balance between the service of the mind and are able to have your own free thoughts, you're able to think new creations, new solutions, new abilities. You can perceive yourself in ways that others have not. Does pain in the chest equal heart attack, or does it equal heart expansion? And so you're able to leave some of those stories that bind you to a predetermined outcome that doesn't involve the divine. And by coming into coherence in your mind and surrendering your mind to your will and your will to your heart, that which is known by the heart is able to guide you. There's probably other ways to help a person understand it, but that's kind of a simplified understanding of how we teach of the electromagnetic nature of us, our forward facing and our rear facing and our past and our future and our present, and to gain awareness of self in those dimensional realities and those potentials, to have the freedom to show up in this moment in choice and to be authentic and to create from a connection to the divine mind and divine will.
And in a world that's so saturated with fear, manipulation, shame, these ego parts of ourself, I don't feel like a lot of people know how to come into that self-mastery, that inner knowing of how to take the mind and thank it, thank it for its message, to now move from being a prisoner of the mind to, like you said, right, allowing it to be the servant in a way, so that you allow it to be your teacher, just like those layers and levels of the ego. And that's something that I would like to dive a little bit more into, is that I feel like because society generally is in that mind-focused reality, and they are in the blocks, they are in the victim energy, how does one start to recognize that so that they can break that cord? Almost, it's like cutting of a cord. And like I said, for me, I've had little light bulb moments, right? I think sometimes we're taught line upon line, precept upon precept, to give us these new forms of awareness so that we can step into creativity. But so many people are prisoners of the mind that these are really kind of like that epidemic in society that we need to address. And especially for some of our listeners out there, to say, okay, like, what can someone do to start to recognize some of their blocks, but then take maybe some action steps to start to step into soul wisdom, into that heart coherence?
One thing I would share is, just to kind of build on some of what Greg has shared, the mind is in every cell of the body. So it's not the brain, though the brain is part of the mind, because the mind is everywhere. And that's the dark feminine, right? The feminine throughout history has been associated with the psyche, the soul, the memory. And the body carries all the memory, everything that has come before you. And so when your body, your own personal body, tries to speak to you, it's usually a still small voice at first. It's a little twitch of a finger, or, a Charlie horse or something. But if you don't listen to your body, then over time, the pain gets louder and then louder and more and more and more. And so I would say to understand the mind is to listen to it, to care for it, to know that the matter by which you were made, that's your feminine inheritance. And so shadow work is really learning to be intuitive, to instead of only operating from your left brain, which is very logical, time bound, thinks linearly, to start entering your right brain, which is your intuitive mind, more heart centered. It's listening from the heart, being compassionate with yourself, um, and paying attention to the little pings, whether it is literally just a hangnail or debilitating back pain like I had for 10 years. In those moments, I'll share my experience. What I did finally for the first time when I did experience my healing, instead of cursing my back pain, which I know people that live with chronic pain, we kind of can get bitter towards life. We can kind of start to feel like, why me? What's happening? Can't this just go away? Try to silence it. But pain is the messenger. And that night that I healed was the first time I can honestly say I wrapped my arms around my back pain, so to say, as if I was hearing it for the first time, like a little child trying to get my attention. Hey, mom, hey, mom, hey, mom. And if you've had children, you know how they follow you around, tell you to turn and say, oh, sweetie, what do you want? They have, the wherewithal to follow you and ask for 30 or 60 or 2 days or whatever. But mom, I still want an answer. I finally listened to it, wrapped my arms around it, and said, what is the message you're trying to tell me? And that's truly in that open state. I was in a receptive, feminine state to receive, because I finally understood I don't know what I don't know. And there's so much more we don't know than we do know. And so to be in that open state, I received seeing all of these patterns, and I saw them for what they were, and knew that in that moment I had a choice. I can sit with the old story because it had created a broken record that played over and over in my life. And I wasn't listening to the inner dialogue that was playing every single day. It was like background noise, but it was always there. And when I finally listened to it, I was like, oh, well, do I really believe that? Do I really think those things? Because if I do, it's very unhelpful, not helpful for progression. And so I loved it for the first time. I gave the pain so much love and gratitude for being so persistent to get my attention in that way, that finally I believe, because I listened, because I honored the pain, my body, for delivering it, I believe I was released, and the message got through, and it actually changed my life because I made a new choice in that moment. So it's a compilation of all of that, but it is love. And so I like to remind people, your mind is not a bad thing. Your mind and your heart in coherence are a beautiful thing. But you've got to be thinking the same thoughts as you're feeling the same feelings. And many people are living in duplicity. So they're thinking one thing and doing another, or saying one thing and feeling another. So they're saying no to things when it means a yes, or they're saying yes to something when it means a no. You really have to get your life in attunement. And when you are at one at one mind, you will experience beautiful things, and more progression and awareness will just keep expanding.
Mm-hmm.
When you're not at one mind, you're in an imbalance of energy, and everything in this reality is energy, frequency, and vibration. Um, and if you are in an imbalance of the positive and negative, then your flesh will tell you that your awareness is imbalanced in that, and you will experience lack in some form, lack of vitality, lack of presence, lack of joy. And these are all choices that divine beings make to experience the duality that is possible here, the teacher, the contrast, the experience. And though it may be a moment, its impact is um, indefinite, it's infinite in its potential and nature. And ultimately, that is what's required to move into the way, is a recognition that through a mortal perspective, who could know what love is? If love is the nature of God, can a mortal speak the words that describe the nature of God? Well, that's a limit that we don't perceive from a mortal space. And so even our perception of self or our perception of love must be offered in the sacrifice of this world, as all things in this world are regenerated into new form in the infinite potential of the feminine form here. All things can come into a new season and into regeneration and into new structure, new form. And so that thing that we think we're sacrificing is actually a limit of us.
It's an idea. So Greg teaches this often. If you could imagine, there's an altar. And if you'll always remember, I don't know what I don't know. Every time you're in any relationship, but especially your counterpart, your partner that you are practicing union with, they represent your idea of God. If you're cursing them, then you believe God curses. If you are loving them, then you believe God is loving. If you're fearing them and you're not willing to lay it all out, share the truth of all things, if you're hiding things from them, whether that's, on your phone or in your life, or, I hear all the time in the work that we do, people with addictions. I don't want my partner to know that I do this. I don't want my, then that's, you're actually hiding and believe you must hide yourself from God. So that's where that shame comes in. You're living in a state of shame and not in a state of love. But if you will remember this altar always laid before you, what are you willing to sacrifice to receive something greater? So one of the things we encourage people to sacrifice is your idea of love, because most people's ideas of love are very limited. So not reaching an unconditional loving state. But even with a partner, if you find yourself, your relationship diminishes or dissolves, okay, I'm going to offer that onto the altar. I thought that was love. Show me something greater. What else is there? What more can I learn in love? And you will continually be taught in love through your children, through your partners, through your loved ones, through your friends. Hey, and this is love too. And this is love too. How can we learn love in all things?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as you're speaking, like so beautiful, like coming back into that I guess I call it the true origin of love, because earlier I was talking about, I could say the word love and it's going to mean something different to every single person that I say it to, because fear and shame and trauma impact us and they interfere with our capacity to give and receive that love. And so being able to, first work with that mind and say, okay, am I open? Am I willing to maybe see a new way? See a new way that love can look differently or feel differently. And so many people, I guess, are blocked off to what unconditional love even looks like. And so I love that you've talked about tuning into the body. Huge. I'm an advocate for this. Like, it's so important because I feel like as children, we were never taught those basic skills of how to communicate with our divine wisdom. And so that body wisdom is so powerful. It's so important. And then loving the dark, loving the pain, loving the messages are those opportunities is when we sit with that mask. That's the way that I look at it. When I've tuned into those parts of me and I've sat with that really terrifying look, like that mask that's like, oh, I don't even want to go here. But when I finally have just sat with that mask and loved it and said, okay, I see you. I hear you, and I'm not leaving you. I'm here. I'm going to hold hands with you. That's when the mask falls off. And when we are in, like what Greg was saying, in that stillness, that's when that portal to love teaches us. It dissolves it. It moves it out of the frequency and the layers and levels of thousands and thousands of years. And so that's what I'm hearing that you're saying is someone at home to go, well, all these bad things happened to me. And me personally experiencing trauma, sometimes it can be hard to just let go and love because there's so many emotions and there's so many layers that come up when you have been traumatized and you have been hurt. And so that's something I would like to be able to get into because I feel like it's necessary. We have to go through the array of human emotions to validate trauma, to allow hard emotions like anger and rage to be seen and heard and felt first. We have to sit with those parts so that then we can come back into unconditional love. So I would love to expand a little bit more on that because for a human response, I think, is to stay in victim, right? And to go, okay, they did this and there's no way that I can ever move forward. Like, this was the worst thing, I could go through a list of all the really horrible, awful things that have happened in humanity. And to be able to get to a space of truly just letting go and leaning into love and saying, okay, what did I learn from this? That's hard. That first resistance part of that is difficult. And so what are your perspectives of being able to help someone, along with what I've said, is allow yourself to feel it first. Allow yourself to give it a voice. So then can we move the energy?
I would share, I think you shared some really helpful points. And then I would add that everybody wants to be witnessed. Without witnesses, were we really here? Did we really go through a life? Did we really have something worth sharing? And so everybody wants to be witnessed. And so one of the things I observe in life is when people tell stories a lot, if they're not evolving in the storytelling, they're really needing to hear themselves. They need to really realize and accept, oh, I hear myself now. I'm looking for someone to hear me, even though all these people keep hearing me. I'm actually just not hearing myself. And when we hear ourselves, we can do something about it, because it is our self that wants to acknowledge this happened. And so it is our self that needs to acknowledge all the feelings, like you said, the rage or the anger or and when we actually move through the feelings, because it's not just the words and it's not just the thoughts, it's the feeling. We have to move through the feelings. We have to be able to mourn or grieve or, and that's this moving energy. And I know that that's helped me throughout my life in different times. But to be able to feel all of those emotions, you will eventually, as you're moving them, if you can, eventually turn it to gratitude. Is there one takeaway? Even with the most horrendous trauma, what did I gain? Because behind every trauma is a gift. And that's what integration will do for people, will unlock the gift. And that gift sometimes is, oh man, without that experience, I wouldn't have started to learn how to speak my voice or to say what I need or to move myself when I'm in harm's way, whether they're in a freeze or a fawn position, right? Like, what did I gain that now, I've been using it over and over and over again. It's hard to say or for people to sometimes understand. Yeah, we've been talking about the contrast. Yeah, sometimes it's the hard stuff that's a much deeper and better teacher than a walk in the park. Like hanging out with unicorns and rainbows all day, every day does not expand your awareness, help you grow. So it is the hard stuff that we enter into and that over time produces the dark night of our soul or whatever you want, the breaking down of, oh, I've been holding it all together so well. Yeah, but when we start to be able to move through the hard things and appreciate the hard as much as we appreciate the easy,
Yes.
that's that space of surrender and acceptance that all of it, like we spoke of earlier, is for our good.
Yes. Well, I love that. That was so beautiful because it is in the surrender, right? It is finally, yes, there's so much grief that comes with saying goodbye to that mask, goodbye to that life. But there's also on the other side of it, this new part, right? And that's where we do become the chain breakers, the cycle breakers that we were talking about before, is especially when I think about my own dark nights of the soul and having to come through these new portals of coming back into my sovereignty, my own soul wisdom. It is when I think about those moments of using my voice or stepping into this new space, when I look back upon lifetimes or generations of my ancestors that were never able to use their voices. And I mean, it's truly powerful to then come on the other side and, yes, find even just that little glimmer, as hard as it is. I have so much compassion and empathy for that, because in the hard, even just a peephole of light is sometimes hard to find. But eventually, I think as we go through that tumult and the ooh and the goo of that cocoon, eventually there is the peephole, right? Eventually there's are those little holes that start to come through, and we can get through that. Like, humans are pretty resilient. And that is where we get to step into the phoenix rising, and we get to step into our greater power. But wow, I mean, don't get me wrong, Angela, when you're saying the unicorns and rainbows, I'm not sure. I always call it the rainbows and roses. I'm like, I love that stage. Like, so
Right.
I mean, I love it. I'm like, when I've been in those moments, I'm like, okay, you finally settle in and you're like, okay, that made it worth it. But because humanity has been so afraid of shadow, so afraid of ego, so afraid of that darkness, I feel like it's just kind of like hitting a thing every time, right? Because people won't go there. They tend to go into that numbing out. They tend to go into those trauma responses because they're afraid. And so it is, like you said, just finally when we can breathe, and when I give my clients permission to just feel the rage, feel some of those, all that just conglomeration of the ooh and goo like surrounding them, it eventually turns into something sacred, right? It's the sacred rage. And then how is it that we use that to like move into the alchemy of what those emotions, what those parts of ourselves are trying to teach us? And that's when the rising can come. That's when we step into that new identity, and and to risk abandonment, to risk rejection, because not everyone's going to be on the same page. Like taking your mask off, stepping into new identity, a lot of people aren't okay with that. They want you to get right back inside of your box and stay where they're comfortable with you being. And so I would love to get into that because, this work isn't always easy. But what would give someone like the courage of going, wow, this might risk me abandonment and rejection? And like, what is that courage or that part that can help someone feel motivated to just keep going, right? To not like keep repressing themselves or pushing themselves back into the box, because that's when all the things in the body start to show up. And that's the bridge sometimes that I see people on, is I see people that are so afraid to, it reminds me of the Wizard of Oz. Like they're so afraid to pull the curtain back that they would rather stay in that discomfort, in those things that are showing up in their body, than pull the curtain back and see what's waiting on the other side.
I think duality, this mortal existence that we're in, can very easily be perceived as a prison. Especially if you feel like you have to relegate yourself to one side of the spectrum or another. The need to be secure drives humans to create attachment to things. And so we think we find freedom in our attachment to ideas, right? But like being the good guys, like this curse America is under, that we believe we're the good guys. Only if there's bad guys, which means that we have to believe that we're on one side or the other. And then there must be somebody to inhabit the other side. But there really is nothing in creation that doesn't belong to the divine. And so the limit that you were speaking of that we hit is the limit of our conscious awareness, that things must be either this or that. Like the divine can only go into a church or to a temple, and my mortal limits will prevent the divine from going into a casino or a strip club. Those are places where God can't go, and we men know that, because we bow to these limits that limit us, not God. And so it's a perspective awareness that you're hitting into, your own perspective that the dark night of the soul is bad and that feeling good is good.
Mm-hmm.
No, they're all exquisite and only can be felt here. And until you feel them, recognize them, redeem them with your love, and offer your love to those things, only then can they be sacred, because there is no rage that is sacred. There's only duality in rage. There is one side of being ragey enough and too ragey, not and too much, right? So in there is a limit. And transcendence is an awareness breaking the barrier of limitation, that I am all things. Nothing grows in singular direction. Everything, like the universe testifies, everything grows omnidirectionally. And so that is the grace, is that transcendent perspective, moving beyond the limits of your own awareness of what things are.
where we have been so entrenched in belief systems and programs and generational, like, this is something that's been going on for quite some time. So to be able to step into that space of accepting all, receiving all as the divine excuse me, receiving all as the divine can be a new concept for people out there listening. Like, that's
It
going to
should
push
not
up.
be.
Yeah, and for some, that's, I think, one of those triggers that allows people to look deeper, to look within. And so what would you say to someone who is listening to that concept of going, wait, that's not what I was taught. That's not how I've seen life up to this point. Like, how would you allow them to bridge this concept?
Because we project in a way that there's an us and them, we
Mm-hmm.
create a space for them to exist against us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All of the transcendent teachers taught beyond that barrier of awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Christ taught, Jesus taught, Yeshua taught of his own ego, right? And his own struggle with the world, his own struggle against himself. We talk about the structures of geometry, and the current human awareness creates a structure of geometry that we project outside of us as the mountains, the big pharmaceutical companies, the governments, the structures that look like this, top down, tell you what to do and how to do it.
Yeah.
And that is our conscious awareness projecting itself outward and creating that space. So they, them have done nothing to the divine, and we are divine. So I would give them that space to remember that never were you not divine. Never were you cut off from the divine.
Mm-hmm.
You chose to be here to experience this, the limits of duality, to expand your joy, your awareness of your lives infinite, your awareness unborn, undying. And that when the earth and the sun have transpired and burned out, that your awareness will continue on. And you'll be harmed by none of this, but only expanded by it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I would say. And then I would say, take heart. Take your heart and create a new reality.
I would just share that all pain is inherited. We are shamans, and it's an awareness that when you've healed yourself, you feel so much gratitude for even the pain, right? But the pain was that messenger, and one of the understandings and awarenesses is that all pain is passed on. And so therefore, through the pain, through your pain, you can see familial patterns. You know, it, scriptures talk about familial spirits. Familial spirits is family spirits, family patterns coming down through you. And they're not regarded as wonderful, beautiful things if you look them up. They're regarded as evil spirits, as, dark spirits. And that is because what wasn't um, what wasn't transmuted in the past will pass down through your genes. It's not just, our genes aren't just physical. Our genes are belief systems, strong emotional impacts, traumas, if you will. And one of the things that we're also quite aware of is the trigger to healing typically will match the trauma. So a lot of people that aren't wanting to recognize they're carrying hurt feelings, anger, grief, all these lower vibrational frequencies, and then they just keep on suppressing. Eventually, the volcano is going to blow. And most of the time, the trigger matches the trauma. So it is something that gets us to move out of that trauma response or that traumatic state of being that we've carried for who knows how long. But if we don't allow, part of that is allowing ourselves to go deep into the feeling state, to acknowledge, I feel this way. And so we're not constantly just, trying to avoid it and shoving it down and moving it. And that's where the moment you're willing, and it's, I've witnessed it oftentimes. There's certain people, men or women, that have a harder time feeling emotional, allowing emotions to just move. And sometimes you don't even have to have an explanation for it. Eventually, in your progression of the work, you will start to move emotions. You'll have days where you're like, I'm just so sad. I don't even know why. Because the body wants to heal. The body wants to let go. And the human body will only store emotion or store trauma for 30 to 35 years. So if you had something in your childhood, eventually it's going to come to the surface, and the surface is the body. So you might feel pain. It might just move through emotions. You might get real sick, throwing up, all kinds of things, but it will move. And if you don't deny it, if you allow it to move and lean into it with grace, then you will experience the movement of that energy, because that's really what it is. We are emotional beings. Energy is meant to be in motion. Unfortunately, it gets stored and stuck and placed in places in our bodies that it eventually manifests as pain.
Yeah, and that's the most beautiful gift we can give to ourselves, is coming from a society that has emphasized repression, the push forward, shove it to the side. Like, I feel like that is the gift of the Aquarian age, is we are stepping into this space of holding room for all of the emotions to come up. And this truly is that permission, for individuals out there to say it's safe. It's safe to feel, it's safe to move through these, because then when we allow ourselves to feel, then can we let go? We can step into gratitude. We can actually step into forgiveness. And forgiveness can also be a very triggering word, especially for people that have been traumatized. But when we finally give ourselves permission to work through all of those stages, that's when we can step into that force of unconditional love and forgive. So I would love to, as we're kind of wrapping up for today, maybe step into some practical tools or rituals or different things that may be able to help someone out there. I feel like we've talked about several. So this episode is going to be one that you're going to want to go back and listen to. And because as we listen, the first time we hear something, there are going to be those ahas. There's going to be those light bulb moments. But as you listen again, Spirit will teach you even deeper. So I highly recommend, invite, hold space for you to use this podcast episode to go back and listen multiple times, because there are such beautiful, deep teachings that go into our ancient soul wisdom. And so, in addition to some of the tools that we've already talked about, what would be something that may be able to be a practical tool, along with, tuning into that body, being able to give yourself permission to feel the whole array of emotions? What would be something that would help someone be able to step into moving into forgiveness along with that gratitude, right? Because when you can finally get to a space of going through something so hard, just like you said, horrific, really dark things, and to be able to finally find the lesson or the piece of gratitude, I feel like that's the next little opening, the next little doorway to go, okay, I can forgive. and I can let go. And so, any tools or tips that you have for that?
I would probably expand awareness around forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when I spoke earlier, as we were talking about the things humans do to try to plan for the future or account for the past, absolve us of our need to forgive and to be
Mm-hmm.
graceful. And so often we're looking for a solution that requires less from us, um, that we are allowed to show up in the future as the self that we know and feel certain of. And to be able to show up as the divine, we must forgive. God eternally lets go of anything that is not that. And so we must also forgive or give to the future that which our hopes and dreams and desires would hold for it. Knowing that those things are in alignment with divine will, that what we want is also what the divine wants. And so forgiveness allows you to come into a place of neutrality, which is where the divine exists and all things emanate from. So that opportunity to forgive allows us the opportunity to return to a place of neutrality and to emanate life and truth from that place, that things are for our good. What has happened to us was a servant to the divine. And by forgiving, we give to the future greater potential for love to show up.
So we're creating space in the future for giving, right?
Mm-hmm.
Giving to ourselves. I would pass on some wisdom that, quite honestly, Greg teaches a lot of people. One, what we fail to forgive, we do to another. So we've heard
Mm-hmm.
it many ways, right? And you might not even have the eyes to see it because honestly, a lot of patterns skip a generation. So until I will often ask individuals, especially like if they're female, hey, tell me about your childhood. Now tell me about what you know of your mom. Now tell me what you know of your grandmother. And a lot of people don't quite know their grandparents as well as maybe they'd hope. But that's sometimes where you can see the pattern repeats so that you can start to say, oh, do I want to be a product of the past or do I want to create something new in the future? So many patterns, especially of pain, because it is passed on. You can, if you start to study patterns, not everyone are pattern recognizers, but you can become. It's just through expanding awareness. So as you expand your awareness, you can start to experience more awareness, more knowledge, more notice more. But one of the things Greg shares with a lot of people is to truly understand the true father and mother principle that we all carry. The father principle is light, it's the sun. We know that the masculine principle is positivity, therefore it's the sun. And we all also know if you spend too much time in the sun, it can burn you, it can hurt you, right? So you use awareness. You need 2 hours of sunlight a day because it purifies the skin, it purifies the blood. And the blood is the living water, the plasma that we're carrying that carries memory with it as well. So purify yourself, get yourself outside of your comfortable homes and your air conditioning and your TV. We have so many distractions and we think we're so greatly blessed by the boxes we put ourselves in. And now I'm talking about homes. We stay indoors all day long. We are missing fresh air, fresh water in every breath, fresh sunlight, getting our feet on the ground and in the dirt. Grounding will help as well, helps to heal. So you want to get yourself to the Mother Earth and out to the Father Sun. And these are such simple practices, and you'd be surprised how many people are like, well, what else can I do? Can I get a light bulb in my home that mimics the sun? We're like, no, 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 that's artificial light. It's not going to do the same thing, right? So start practicing some of these simple things and get yourself out of your comfortable couch and move your body. But to return to a state of love and forgiveness, I do like what Greg said, and I mimic it. A God lets go. God's voice is silence, you know. So if you would start to listen to the words you think, your inner dialogue will tell you way more than you've been paying attention to. You know, if you're sitting there cursing something or replaying an event from your past where you felt like you made a wrong choice, that's where a lot of trauma will stick with us. Because, oh, was I in the wrong place at the wrong time? How can I reframe it? Because until you look back in time and reframe your history, you will carry the painful stories. By reframing, they all of a sudden have at least one little takeaway. And now you are collapsing timelines. You are able to bring more of your presence into the present moment and be there more fully.
Beautiful. Wow. Yeah, this is definitely going to be an episode that we're all going to want to go back and write down those beautiful, precious gems. Wow. I loved every moment of this. And as we're closing, I would love to offer space if there's any other imparting wisdom or information that you'd like to share with the audience, for sure, before we close up today.
Yeah, I would maybe like to counter with a different opinion about something that maybe is a commonly held perspective, um, is that the world that we're living in is somehow bad right now. We live in biblical times. All time is happening at once, meaning the Bible is always true in that way, that it can help us see patterns that show up every day, all the time. And by gaining awareness of those patterns, humanity can free itself from the perspective that we may be moving into something bad, or that now that we sit in this place between two worlds, that certainly it must mean bad is coming, or that it could. That's a matter of perspective. The Schumann resonance has crossed a threshold where there are more people that openly choose to serve love than are in the sleep and think that everything is bad and that darkness is all around us.
And I'll just piggyback on that. The Earth plane is a self-organizing system. And what that means is we are all projecting our reality. And then therefore we experience it. So ask yourself, what reality do I want to experience, you know, and become more conscious in it. When you start to do all things by, for, and through love, having love be the purpose for which you do all things, you will start to experience and expand in love. And it might be by small degrees at first, but it gains momentum. I always share with individuals, there are a few things that expand omnidirectional, that we can have awareness about them, and that is love. Love always expands in every direction. The more you're willing to go up, the more you have to go down. It's all energetics. So the more awakened and aware we become, we start to feel more of all things, not just the good days. We start to be more aware of our down days. But when we can enjoy them, choose them just as much, not wish them away, then we will be able to move out of them, and we keep that going. And a good explanation of that is the EKG. You know, when we're watching a heart, a healthy heart moves all the way up and all the way down, but a very weak heart is barely moving, right? So know that for every time we go down, you're going to go back up. And so if you're being asked energetically to feel sad one day, don't believe you're going to always be sad. just fully feel it, because that is how we move the needle. And only what is fully felt is redeemed. That's actually what redeeming means, is to be counted towards your experience here. If you're going to spend all these years in a human body, have it all counted towards you and your experience, instead of just thinking you can pick and choose. As you expand in awareness, you expand in love, you expand in consciousness in every direction. So you become fully human that way.
Beautiful. I have loved every moment. Just like I said, this has been an honor, and I suspect this isn't the last time you're going to see this beautiful couple. Thank you for holding that mirror for the divine masculine, the divine feminine energy that so intrinsically dances to bring us back that unity within ourselves. And it's all here. We never lost that part of ourselves. We just get to go through the process of kind of peeling back so that we can come right back home. So thank you so much to the both of you. And as far as the audience today, I invite you to just pause and take a breath as you have felt the resonance of what we've explored together. Like I said, this is a beautiful foundational teaching that is that core. That's the part of love that's not just a fleeting emotion. It's the living frequency. It's presence. It's the current of life that flows through us at all times. And when we soften and we settle into it, that's when we allow it to lead, and we remember who we truly are, who is whole, sovereign, and deeply connected to our wisdom. And Angela and Greg shared so beautifully how love has carried them not only through their own transformations, but through the transformations of many individuals that they work with personally. And so may their stories today remind you that no matter where you are in your journey, that love is always available. It's the healer, it's the teacher, it's the guide. And so as you take this with you with every breath, it's the invitation to return to love. And every moment that we have is that chance to embody it, to extend it, to live from love, and to move into our creative processes. So thank you again for joining us in this sacred conversation. And if this episode spoke to your heart, please share it with someone that may need its medicine today. And remember that you are love, you are sovereign, and you are that bridge between heaven and earth. Until next time, thank you so much for joining. Thank you for listening to the Discover Divinity podcast. If this podcast resonates with you, I invite you to check out discoveringdivinity.com. You will find resources to reclaim your sacred, sovereign spirituality. Here, you can join the Discover Divinity community, where we have free online community classes, as well as done-for-you courses and programs. Navigating the unique personal path to wholeness can feel overwhelming at times. If you would like further support or are ready to take your healing empowerment to the next level, I offer one-on-one intuitive sessions in a variety of different packages where we will discover, release, create, reclaim. Discover your innate wisdom that lies within. Release the imbalances that prevent you from living your truth. Create harmony in body, heart, mind, spirit, energy, and relationships. Reclaim your sovereign soul. It is time to discover new possibilities. It is time to discover you.